life and confidence coach Dianna Leeder, and this is my podcast, the Crave More Life Roadshow. It's here we talk about emotional hits and lovingly kicking our own asses to get through them. Just so you know, it always comes down to being your beautiful, sassy self, living and loving from you, no matter what. So join me to hear about the healing journeys of other women, and you just might become a DIY ass kicker too. Hey, DIY ass kickers. Today I have shamanic teacher Katy Holton on the show. Katy Holton's unique psychic skills will masterfully guide you through connecting to deep self-trust so you can be integrating spiritual knowing on all aspects of your life. Her approach focuses on deepening our connection to earth and spirit by clearing illusion so we might walk in joy, clarity, and purpose. All links that lead to Katy will be posted in the show notes. Okay, hey everybody. It's Dianna Leeder here, the host of the Crave More Life Roadshow. I'm an intuitive life hack and a confidence coach who helps women get what they want by finding their voice. I'm also the lead author of the recently published book, Find Your Voice, Save Your Life. And it's on its way to being a series by publishing its second edition early August. I'm so thrilled about that. So just a real heads up to our Facebook listeners and watchers that we really like to kind of get into the conversation with the Roadshow interviews. So we really want you to post whatever you want, any questions or whatever. But if you don't mind, we're going to come back to those later after the recording is finished. So this woman with me, this wonderful woman, is shamanic teacher Katy Jo Holton. Katy Jo's unique psychic skills will masterfully guide you through connecting to deep self-trust so you can integrate spiritual knowing with all aspects of your life. Her approach focuses on deepening our connection to earth and spirit by clearing illusion so we might walk in joy, clarity, and purpose. Katy's Shaman School is a 6-month virtual shamanic training intensive for healers, wellness practitioners, and personal healing. You can learn more about it at Katy's website, holtonhealingarts.com. So welcome to the Roadshow.
Thank you so much.
Katy, really happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, it's awesome. This is a thrill. It's a thrill for me. It's a real thrill for me. I said this to you before we started to record. I love interviewing healers. It just opens up so much, I think, for me personally, but I think it really does for my audience and other people that are listening. So yeah, thank you. So give us an idea of what got you started on this path as a shamanic teacher.
Well, the quick answer as far as specifically finding shamanism was I was doing some research for my undergrad. I was doing a huge intensive on Jungian psychology and dreams, and one of the books that I was reading referenced a shaman. And so I was like, what the heck is that? And this was earlier in the Google days. So I Googled.
You know you're going to get that question too, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I Googled it and found a workshop. I was living in Savannah at the time, at Savannah, Georgia. I found a workshop in Orlando a couple weekends from then and signed up and jumped right in. And it really opened up a lot for me. What I loved about it at the time, I had been already going through a lot of personal healing stuff and, had a curiosity and a love for just exploring different understandings of consciousness. Mm-hmm. But I had also been doing most of my work within Eastern philosophy, which of course I still really value. But what I loved about my first shamanic experience is with something like meditation, where often you're kind of just observing what's happening, right? And kind of trying to come back to center and not getting caught up in the story. Mm-hmm. Meditation, or at least the way a lot of Westerners practice it, is very masculine, right? So like the idea is like stare at a wall for 8 hours in silence, which is, again, a great tool. What I loved about the shamanic path is it really helped me see that there was a whole other side of my spirituality that didn't get acknowledged or accepted. So even just the act of preparing for journey work, for example, involves drumming and singing and dancing and movement.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed that this allowed the full spectrum of who I am as a human to kind of come into my spirituality.
Right. Wow. Okay. So let's go back a little bit and get you to tell us, what is a shaman?
Sure. So this can vary a lot. There are different lineages and different practices. Kind of the general rule of thumb that is across all different ideas or definitions is shamans work with the unseen realms. So we work with compassionate spirits and help become a conduit to connect that unseen realm with our 3D reality. And of course, underlying all of that is the purpose of restoring balance and harmony, whether that's with an individual or with a community or with an environment or within a company, right?
Right. I love that term, compassionate spirits. I love it. I'm not sure that I've ever heard it before. I mean, it's obviously it's very simple and clear, but yeah, I love that. It really speaks to me. Beautiful. So, okay, so you were able to determine that that's the path that you wanted to take. So, what was it that spoke to you about that piece, like that really was triggered for you? That this is helping me too.
Mm-hmm. The whole path within shamanism, and I, from what I see, is a path within for healers as well, of all kinds, is really getting to trust ourselves. So along the path, you start to notice when you feel nudges or when things come up for you. You start to see when all the times that you maybe have a feeling and then the thing happens. And in particular with journey work, this can really help with journey work and working within a community, which is something that we are becoming more familiar with, again, especially as white Americans. We don't necessarily have this really deep understanding of what community is and how to be in community. And often we find that when we communicate with from a deeper level in our own being with other people, we can see where these little nudges are lining up and connecting. And so with journey work, you might go do a journey and have this vision or this understanding, and then share it with someone else and realize that there's a connection there, right? And so then it just reinforces that, like, your own trust of seeing what you see and knowing what you know and trusting what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm. So, am I getting this right then, that it's primarily about connecting to spirit? Yeah, there are a few layers, and that's probably really simple, right?
I mean, it should be. I think we overcomplicate things a lot, but yeah, absolutely connecting to spirit and finding, it just made me question that. I feel like where I'm at with it right now is finding that place, within us where my understanding of myself and my understanding of spirit is a match, finding kind of that central point where it all crosses. And so, yeah, and then another layer in there is, integrating all aspects of what we are. So again, there's a bit of I feel like when many of us begin to awaken, often we've had a story of some harm that's been done to us. So it kind of propels us on this path of wanting to only be around people that make us feel good, or only be around certain things, or only be in peaceful environments. And so we kind of we almost become more sensitive because we're removing ourselves from the full spectrum of what it's like to be here on Earth. Mm-hmm. And with this path, we learn to really look at the pieces that we want to reject and have compassion for them and bring them in, so that we're not spending all this energy trying to make other things bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and along those lines is we learn to do things like, of course, shadow work, integrating, you know, our voice into our path, integrating our sexuality into our path. Many of us are grown up to kind of be Puritans and, you know, repress that. So all of these things that make us human, anger, you know, is a healthy thing to have. And I think especially as women, there's a tendency to want to be the good girl, right? And so we repress these parts of us. And when we learn to turn and look at them and find the medicine in them, then we can walk around in more wholeness.
Wow. Yeah. Find the medicine in them. I love that. Part of my work, this is really resonating with me for sure, because part of my work is to support women to, you know, if you're angry about something, you're angry. You know, it's not something to be put over here. It's just something to learn from and to understand and do what you're called to do with. You know, it's I think we either, from my experience, women will go in two directions. Either, you know, if they're angry, be really angry, like over the top, and then feel badly about it, you know, or suppress it and, you know, eat the words that you really want to say and then pay the price later. Either way, they're paying the price, right? So I like that intersection, the T that you were talking about, you know, to kind of bring us and our understanding about spirituality together, you know, bring spirit in. I think, because I'm not sure, you know, as much as I love this stuff, I don't think it's as, you know, it's not as understandable to all of us. So I really want to make it a little user friendly too, because I think it's so incredibly valuable. So yeah, that's kind of my hidden agenda to make to, you know, to open up people to the opportunities for healing and growing that can come from connecting to spirit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes we can get deep into this journey and start to use language that isn't necessarily relatable or confusing, or we think that to tap into sort of this spiritual wooey side of us requires, you know, lots of preparation or doing weird rituals or, you know, taking plants or doing all these things. And actually, I find that over and over again, it's actually not usually a big deal. I find that even folks that don't necessarily have a huge practice doing this work can connect really quickly, because again, like that connecting to spirit is the same as connecting to our inner knowing. And so often our gifts can really open up just through just tapping into what is in your consciousness, what's in your awareness. When something pops into your head, there's a reason for that. And so the more we kind of observe, oh, what's popping into my head right now? What am I feeling right now? What's going on in my body right now? These are all direct access to this spiritual realm and to, you know, this sort of higher consciousness that sometimes seems like this elusive thing, but it's like right here. And it's so simple.
Yeah. You know, I love that, because there is that piece where we, you know, we're trying so hard to be true to ourselves, to understand, you know, what we need and to be able to express what we need and live from there. And yet the spiritual piece, I think the piece that gets forgotten quite often is that it is so accessible, you know, and that, you know, there's kind of, and this is how I would describe it, just that partnership, you know, between spirit and us that, you know, just increases our potential for joy and peace inside, alignment, you know, that it's like, you know, to me, it's like having somebody, you know, at your side. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Awesome. So, can anybody be a shaman?
I actually believe so. What I see happening right now is in the same way that anybody can be a psychic, um,
Mhm.
anyone can be a shaman. So I know you've had this conversation before. So the psychic or intuitive gifts that we have is just, again, a part of being human. Now, certainly some people come into this life already gifted in those areas, and it's just, it's another sense, right? So it's a
Mhm.
way of predicting the past and the future as a survival mechanism, really. Same thing with empathy. Empathy is a survival mechanism.
Yeah, good point.
And so, in the same way that anybody can learn to be more empathic, I feel like anyone can also learn to be a shaman by understanding this part of our human capacity. And especially in,
Mm.
again, that like learning to, listen to the inner self and develop a relationship with all of the experiences we have that aren't seen. And in particular, I feel like one of the gifts of the shaman is getting really good at being able to translate the information that we have that isn't seen into our everyday lives in a way that lands with people, right?
Right, right. When did you first discover your own gifts?
It's a great question. I find it to be really unfolding. Um, as a kid, I had definitely had one of those histories of, I would like have a dream and then it would manifest the next day.
Mm.
Or,
Mm.
as a sensitive person, I might come in and, snuggle with a relative or my mom or something and say something that was moving to them because, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was tapping into what was the energetic that was going on underneath the surface level. Um, and so I was curious about that kind of thing, but it also wasn't like a thing where it was like, wow, look what I can do. It was just, again, kind of part of being
Just
human.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Perfect.
it was probably as an adult as I continued to journey within shamanism and learn, how to apply our natural intuitive gifts, that I feel like a lot more opened up because there's like a first level, which is sort of like, oh, I can do this thing. Like this thing works and really helps people. And then it's also learning how to really help people on a deeper level. And sometimes
Right.
um, I think it's important, we, in anything that we do, we always go through a few different stages or we go around the circle, so to speak. And so oftentimes when we, the same happens for traumatic experiences. When we discover our gifts or have a traumatic experience, our first step is usually sort of reclaiming our power and being like, whoa, I'm here. I can do this thing. I'm a badass. Like, wow. And
Yeah.
which is awesome. And then we usually get called to sort of another stage, which is sort of like further integrating and calling ourselves, up around the circle even more. So with the gifts, when I first began, looking back, I realized, I've learned to be a much better healer. Initially, it was more about my excitement with what I could do. So it was like, oh, like if you come and sit with me, I can tap in and tell you some things about yourself, right? Which is awesome. And also gave people a lot of help and insight. And what I've learned to do now as I've developed into my gifts is actually, that it's not about showing people what I can do, but helping to show people what they can do.
Yeah.
And so kind of dropping those gifts even lower and using that as like really true empowerment of others rather than perpetuating this thing of I know more than you or I can tell you
Yes.
something that you don't know about yourself.
Yes, absolutely. That's interesting because one of the things that I know that is very strong for me is my intuition. And when I am in with a client, when I'm talking to a client and some of that comes up and I share it, you know, 9 out of 10 times it's, yeah, yep, that's me, you know. So I think we know this stuff on some level. Sometimes, you know, for whatever reason, I suppose we're just not ready to acknowledge it. But yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's, you know, when we can get connected to what really is ours, and what we can, you know, what we can do with that for not just ourselves but for the world, I think is so, it's incredibly powerful and empowering. Yeah, so I love that you dropped down and shifted that for yourself and for people that you're working with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So now you're like in it full on, right? It's it. That's it. That's cool. So I'm curious about how, you know, somebody is in there, if they're noticing things, or they, you know that they maybe have high intuition or whatever it is, whatever they're calling it. So how do they know when they are being called forth like that? How do they know that it is something that can be really helpful, or even just know that that's what's happening? This is a connection to spirit here. How do they know that?
Yeah. So often I find that usually people have, well, one of two experiences or a combination of the two. So for many of us, it is that sort of like inner nudge. And so you might even look back, like if I look back over the course of my life, there wasn't some big moment that was like, oh, do the thing now, right? It was sort of this like these little breadcrumbs that kept pointing. It's almost like this little nudge, this little tapping that keeps, again, like if we just tune into our awareness, what's coming into our mind, and we keep having that question, well, that's a pretty good sign. You know, if it's crossing your awareness and you're like, huh, I kind of noticed this thing, this little nudge, then that's a really good sign. For others, what might happen is really having the experience of an initiation. And so that might look like, you know, having like a near-death experience, a major trauma that really opens things up, or having a loved one pass is a huge invitation into exploring this part of our human capacity. So often when we have a near-death experience or a loved one pass, people really have, again, you know, without needing to be all woo about it, you know, you just have this sense of that person's spirit often kind of lingering, and begin to wonder like, oh, am I making things up? Am I in connection with them? What's going on here? And so this is usually an invitation here as well to explore this part of ourselves. Sometimes the combination looks like you have a nudge that's like, okay, like it's time to look at this thing, or it's time to explore my intuition deeper. It's time to get to know myself more, you know, that pathway of deep self-knowing and understanding. And then we are like, but I got to go to work, and or it's like, but I have too many kids, and or you know, or my husband
wouldn't time for that.
And we, you know, so we tuck it away, and we tuck it away, or we're like, that's crazy, and tuck it away, or I'm making things up and tuck it away. And sometimes we keep tucking it away, and then so spirit was like, okay, I'll give you a bigger sign, and then they might give us an initiation of some kind. So this is another thing that often happens for people.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I tucked mine away for years thinking that I couldn't really do that. You know, I just was in such awe of anybody who had any kind of gift or skill in that way. You know, it's, oh no, I couldn't do that. You know, I'm not that powerful. So yeah, I totally get that tucking away. And I really think I also connected with you when you were talking about, you know, someone losing a loved one. So many people will talk about, you know, I feel them here with me, or, you know, they spoke to me in a dream, or whatever it was. And I think often, you know, we lose the bigger picture of that, you know, you were saying it's an invitation to open yourself up to more. I think a lot of women, or a lot of people just generally, oh yeah, that happened. Yep. And I can't imagine anything more peaceful than being able to make a connection with a loved one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I can see from the little bit I know about your experience, I think sometimes we sort of get that invitation or the door cracks open a little bit, and again, we think of the most extreme version that we know of that kind of stereotype. And so it's like, well, I don't want to go there because then I might be overcome. Like, what happens if I, go off the deep end, or, if I want to learn to understand my intuition more or explore the spiritual realm more, I might become a weirdo. All of these things, and actually, it doesn't have to be like that, right? We can be subtle, we can still understand this part of who we are and learn to integrate that back into our lives, so it's not these two separate things, and we don't have to start dressing differently to embody this. In fact, I feel like this is kind of where we're at in our culture right now, is learning to do this work for ourselves, so that we can be a shaman within our families or within our communities, so we can be a shaman within our company, so you can do this work and be an interior designer, for example, and work with somebody and understand what's happening with them on an energetic level, and then being able to bring that into the way you design the room and help bring that forward for that person. You can be a website designer and be a shop. A lot of people that find themselves in leadership within a company are learning to understand this part of who they are and their intuition, and being able to read the energy of a situation, so that we can ask ourselves, okay, what would help bring some harmony to the situation, and then foster that.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're getting up on the table in their robes and their crystals and calling in some spirit. It's as simple as being able to understand the energetics of what's happening underneath, and maybe even just saying a couple words to shift the energy in the room to help us move through this block that we're facing, in a staff meeting or something like that.
Yes. Beautiful. You know what? From my way past history, it would have been nice for somebody in the room a few times to be pulling out some of those things. Yeah. But yeah, I totally love that, because I think that's it. And so we have to ask the obvious question, which is, what about that woo-woo? What about that perception that, if you have any kind of spiritual gift, this is the box that you're in. And there's a real pushback I'm noticing too. There's such a pushback. I personally, I would like us to change the understanding in a on a individual basis with woo-woo, but there is a real big pushback I'm hearing through the the spiritual community, that no more woo-woo, because it just it's not considered to be positive. It's not considered to be, it's not a very good description of what we're doing, right? So yeah, so what's your take on that?
I use this analogy a lot with many things, but so I think sometimes we have a tendency to think of things as linear, as a line, as like we're here and we're going here, right? And actually, nothing's like that. We're actually walking in a circle. So if we're talking about outward expression of our spirituality, you might start on the circle and you might be like, that's ridiculous. Being working with spirits, working with magic, intuition, our psychic gifts, all of this is ridiculous. I'm practical, I'm rational. And so we look at people on the other side of the circle and we're like, you're wrong, right? And then we continue around the circle, and then all of a sudden we have a spiritual experience that sort of wakes us up, and we're like, oh shit, like I'm starting to really have like deep connections or deep synchronicities, and there's like there maybe isn't a rational explanation for this, but when that happens, you fucking know. You know that it means something, right?
Yeah.
And so then here you are looking at where you just were on the circle that was like, well, that's crazy. And looking at, again, maybe the other side that is the full manifestation of it. And we're kind of in the middle. And so it's like, okay, well, there's a way that sometimes as we move around, we can start to move slowly because we're like, oh, am I actually going that direction? And when we give ourselves permission, then we might continue around. And so then we might have that full on immersion where we're like, okay, I'm, deep diving into this whole realm of things and getting to understanding myself more and understanding my relationship with other people more and understanding my relationship with the earth more. And so then maybe we might have an experience where it's like, okay, I'm not hiding this part of who I am anymore. And so that might look like the biggest woo. That might look like, doing the dress or doing the outfit or, coming to work looking a little bit differently or actually telling your family that you get psychic insight or something like that. And so then we can get there and we can look back on the other side of the circle at people that are kind of being, oh, this is ridiculous. You should be practical. And there's a way that we can then hate them.
Yeah.
And so really what's being called for is, compassion, is understanding that we are all walking around the circle and we're all at different points in the circle. And so whenever we're looking across the circle with, with that disdain or hatred, naturally what will happen is we'll be called to be on that side of the circle at some point so that we can experience understanding of what it's like.
Right. What a great, I can picture that in my head. Yeah, that's awesome, Katy. So, and I guess what I really took from that was that understanding of self really allows us to be understanding of others as well. And I think that can be applied to all kinds of things happening in the world today. So yeah, I love that. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, it's also when I think about it, because it takes me, because I can visualize it, it really takes me to a place where that, that could be an easy exercise, for a woman if she is struggling with, where she is with any issue, if she's in conflict with any issue, do your circle. Where are you in the circle?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So there's still that piece about being fearful of what we may encounter. I don't think that media over the years has been entirely kind or truthful about really what we may come across. So what would you suggest to someone who's just really fearful and doesn't really want to go there? They know that they have some gifts, but the fear is not letting them go further.
Yeah. Well, one piece of advice is I think I do this all the time. I sometimes get myself in the spot where I feel like I need to do all or nothing. And we can give ourselves permission to do things one step at a time. Mm-hmm. So, just because you're starting to be called to understanding your spiritual gifts more doesn't mean you need to jump straight into the light, right? You can dip your toe in first and ease your way in. And also at any point, you can just get out of the water. You don't have to stay there. And so, with beyond that, then the next question to speak to the mind a little bit is when we're called to a thing, we almost always spend a lot of time fearing the bad things that might happen if we were to do the thing, right? If we were to speak our mind, we spend way more time in the anxiety of what we think, how we think people might receive us. And then usually when we actually say the thing, it's like, oh, that actually wasn't that bad.
Easier than I thought.
I'm not dying. It might have felt like I was going to die, but I'm actually not. And now I feel so relieved, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And and so, the same is true here also. One thing that we're learning more and more on a massive scale is, that fear and excitement are two sides of the same coin. So again, like
Mm-hmm.
I like bribe myself. I find myself in situations where I'm like, oh, that seems like a little scary to do the thing, and I just again talk to my rational mind and remind myself, this is this is the fear here. This is our ego coming in and trying to keep us small and keep us separated from our wholeness. And so it's like, okay, well, now that I remember that that's what my body's doing, I can talk myself into saying, well, I wouldn't be afraid if I wasn't also a little excited.
Yeah.
And so kind of flipping that. So what excites me about doing this thing? And and when we can entertain that idea, right, again, so then we're just kind of asking ourselves these questions and seeing what comes up. And oftentimes we focus on what's the bad thing and keeping the bad thing away. And so the invitation is to begin to ask, well, what do I want? What's the good thing? What is the thing that makes me excited? Why am I getting excited? And see if there's anything there for us, right? And then again, as we find out, often we spend so much energy pushing things away, and that's a lot of energy that we're spending that could be put towards calling in what we actually want.
Yeah. 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 I can see that. You're right. And I mean, we just get stuck in that muck of fear, even if it's something, yeah, that we really, really want. But there it is. There it is. And we're not going to move past that. So yeah, to be able to recognize the shifting of that energy and what that can do for us is huge. And yeah, I mean, I've been there a million times, where you finally do something and think, why didn't I do this 3 months ago? It's ridiculous. Yeah, give your head a shake. Come on.
It's okay, it's fine.
Yeah. Because I also believe we need to get to places when we are meant to be there. So yeah, it's all good for sure. There's that self-acceptance, which is all part of knowing what you need as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
So anything else that you want to share with our audience today?
That's a let me just sit with that for a second.
Maybe where you get your earrings, because they're really cool.
Actually, just made only 2 days ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was just tracking kind of part of the conversation, and earlier you asked what kind of brought me on this path, and of course, there was the simple answer of where the calling came in and answering that call, and also there's the piece with I was thinking about this. So a few years ago, I'd already been pretty immersed into this healing work, and I did the thing. Speaking of sharing our stories and our voices, I did the thing where a friend of mine had shared a rape story on Facebook, and then I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm about to do this too. And so then I did the thing where I shared it on Facebook. And I had already done a lot of healing work around that piece. So I noticed actually, and I want to share this because I noticed that one of the things that held me back the most from sharing that story was really not my own shame from the situation or my own pain from the situation, but that I didn't want to burden other people.
Right.
I didn't want other people to feel bad for me. I didn't want my family to feel bad or feel guilty. And so there's a way that sometimes we hide what our experiences are for the benefit of others. And actually, there's so much medicine in those moments.
Mm.
And so just kind of and for me, that opened up this whole other journey along my path, because from there I could actually look back at the history of some sexual abuse in my life and heal that whole line of stuff. It wasn't just this one thing, right?
Yeah.
And it also had me look at my part in it and the shadow side of who I am, and that also opened up this whole other layer of my gifts and learning how to use them. And so I guess I just want to encourage people, well, two things. If you're finding yourself, again, that like kind of fear of holding back, there's medicine there for people. And so if it keeps coming into your awareness, there's a reason that it
That's
keeps
the
coming
indicator.
into awareness. Yeah. And the other piece that I recommend is doing it in a small circle first. Maybe not broadcasting it to social media, where you're likely to re-traumatize yourself from whatever story you have about the thing. And so, there's all these beautiful men and women holding circles for one another for us to share and process this stuff. And so as you're kind of exploring, maybe tapping into your spiritual gifts, or beginning to heal your past trauma, or, even just expressing maybe a communication that you already have with the spirit realm, again, going back to that all or nothing thing, there's a way that sometimes we feel like if we were to claim who we are, or to share our voice, means, we would have to get up on the loudest thing and say the loudest thing. And, I also feel like it's really important to understand that you don't have to go to the biggest thing first, right? Find the place where it's maybe a little bit edgy for you, but it's not the scariest, it's believable, right? So you wouldn't, if you were playing around with being a witch, you probably wouldn't go to church that Sunday and stand up in the thing and be like, I'm a witch, ha! Right? Because you're just going to bring on all of this stuff, all of the story you have about why it's bad to share, or why you can't share who you are. But maybe you share that with your husband, right? And that's the first step. And then when you feel into that and find that it's actually okay, and maybe there's some conversation around it afterwards, maybe you have an experience afterwards, again, like, I didn't actually die, and now I'm not spending all this energy not being who I am, then you can move more outward with it, right? But just kind of a couple pieces to play around with as we're feeling that, like, ooh, I have this thing that I want to do, or I have this thing that I want to say, and can I do the thing, or should I do the thing? A couple pieces just to consider.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, no, they're excellent tips. Yeah, thank you. I run into women that are looking to heal all the time in my practice, and in the book series for sure. It's been big, and not every woman. I mean, everybody has their the healing that they choose to do and they feel called to do. But yeah, and strangely, and we did not script this, honestly, listeners, we didn't script this, but I just posted yesterday about a group a writing group that I'm going to host for women to simply come together, a small group, come together and write and share and, have that safe woman space to do that in. So, because yeah, I agree. I mean, we have to decide when we do it. We have to decide how we do it, but we need to do it.
Yeah. So true. And you can really have a beautiful experience being held in a container that's designed to do this work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So I have one last question for you, and I ask it of everybody just to kind of humanize the whole thing a little bit for listeners. So can you tell us one funny or fun thing about you that you don't normally share?
Okay, sure. At the end of my shower, I love to crank it to like the hottest temperature. Let it off of my back. My little favorite thing.
And what is that, just for the sensation of it?
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. It's like soothing and Yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny because it is like I keep hearing, and I could never do this because I'm a cold person all the time. I could probably do the hot, yeah, but I keep hearing, you have your shower so hot and steamy, and then
Yeah.
you put it to cold, and like no, 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 that doesn't. I'm with
That's
you.
cool.
Yeah, I'm with
You
you.
enjoy that side of the circle. I'm going to stay over here with my scorching hot water.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's cool. Thank you so much, Katy Jo. I really appreciate you
Yeah,
being
absolutely.
here. It's been fun and you've been really informative. I love for healers to be able to share not just their path, but how other women can connect and get on theirs, which is what you've done, which is awesome. So thank you. I really appreciate that very, very much. And listeners, thank you so much for showing up today. As I always tell you, just by showing up, you're kicking your own ass. And now that I'm in my new living space and my new office, then you notice my 24 right behind me. Hopefully it will stay. Something won't happen. It will fall off the wall. It may, but you never know. So that's just to indicate that there are 24 hours in this wee day, and try to make the most of all of them. Even the ones where you have to sleep and recharge and rest. So that's it for me. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you next time. If you like today's podcast, hit subscribe at the bottom on your way out, and come find me at cravemorelife.com for even more DIY ass kicking.